Geht bis Jahre des Shmai Shabbos Pashas Breishis. Varchim Achedish Marchshon ה'תשכ. Breishis Boroh Likim Beis HaShamayim Beis HaOretz. Beis HaShamayim Beis HaOretz. Right, so maybe Chak Admo Marashab. So the Rebbe Rasha brings Pirush Rashi Zal. So in his Maimer of Tafresh Ayin Vov, that is said 50 years earlier. So by 50 years. No, sorry. So it'll be 100 years. And 70 to 20, 50, 50, yeah. Pirush Rashi, so he brings the Rashi's explanation. Rabbi Yitzchak, Rashi says, quote, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Torah should have begun only from the first mitzvah designated, in which talks about Hashem commanding us to designate this month as the first month of the Jewish calendar. Ma'atam pasad Breishis. Why does the Torah begin with the Breishis? It says, Rabbi Yitzchak mishum keich ma'aseh v'git li'amoi los lahem nachlas goyim. Expressing the pasuk in Tehillim that says, the pasuk in Tehillim answers this question, that the power of his works he relates to his people in order to give them inheritance of the nations. Meaning, if the nations of the world will say to Yidden, you are thieves, that you conquered the land of the seven nations, Eden will tell them, Eden say to them, the whole world belongs to Hashem, who Boroh, he created from the son, and he gave this land to that which is upright in his eyes, etc. So that's the gist of the quote of Rashi. Mamshich, so Rebbe Rashab continues and writes, in explaining Rashi's question. Indeed, it's taka wondrous. That creation of heaven and earth is mentioned in Torah. Actually, other Mefarshim say, and the Rebbe himself in Kama Sichlis, that the question is, and it's actually implied in Rashi, Ma'atam Pasach, why does Torah begin with the account of creation? Not that it shouldn't be there, just why should Torah begin with it? Because Torah is a book of instructions, so the first thing is, what do you do? And then later, come back, circle back, and give the whole background. But the first burning question is, and the opens Torah is, so what's the behavior? What's the instruction from God? But here, the Rebbe Rashab is saying it's nifla that it should be mentioned altogether. That creation should be mentioned altogether in Torah, not just as the first subject, but altogether. Why not? Because as we just said, Torah is as implied by the word Torah, it means instruction. It's actually a zohar. As in a mora, a teacher, hora, a parent. He sefer dinim, says the Rebbe Rashab, it's a book of laws. So what's creation doing in Torah? That's the Rebbe Rashab. Now the Rebbe adds in brackets, cannot be said that in order to answer an accusation of the nations of the world, so therefore Torah addresses something which really doesn't belong in Torah. We have to say, we don't know why, but we have to say, this is also shaykh l'Torah. All right, so he's explaining Rashi's question. And we have to understand Rashi's answer, that to answer the Musa'ilom, that's part of Torah. What is meant by the phraseology to give them the inheritance of the nations, as opposed to give them this piece of land? By the emphasis that it's nachlas goyim. And third question, Ma'o ingin shenosna la'asher yosher beina. Who is he giving it to? Not the one he chooses, the one he wants to, but the one who is yosher beinav, upright in his and God's eyes. What's meant by that? Yeah, so what are the four questions? Summarize the questions. This is Rashi's question and the elaboration on it. What's this doing? An answer to Goyim doing in Torah? I'm sorry. Sorry. The first question is, what's the account of creation doing in Torah? Torah is a book of laws, so it shouldn't be there. So that is explaining Rashi's question. Bemis nifla hadavar. It's strange and wondrous. So we're explaining the question of Rashi. Now Rashi's answer, that it's in order to answer the charge of the Goyim, so that needs to be understood. How we get a compromised Torah to answer Goy? What does that mean? Compromised Torah because it doesn't belong in Torah. Torah is a book of laws. So we're asking on the answer. We have the answer in Rashi. We're asking, what does this mean? How is this part of Torah? And then the question is, why is that so described as Nachlas Goyim? And finally, what is meant that Hashem gives it to the one who's upright in his eyes, as opposed to the one he decides he wants to give. Base. He continues in the Maimer, so to understand this, we have to understand this meaning that the Pasuk says. It's a Pasuk in Shmuel. God is the God of knowledges in the plural. The Zohar makes the commentary, Shein Beis Deis. The Pasuk is referring to two knowledges, two perspectives, both of them godly, part of Torah. Das Elim and Das Tachten, the higher perspective and the lower perspective. What are they? Das Elyon, the higher perspective is Shulamayla Yesh Ulamata Ayin. Above is the true being, and below is nothing. Now, usually, or elsewhere said this, that the word Ulamata, below, refers to creation. Creation is ayin. Creation has no reality unto itself. The being, the true I am, is above. You'll see a different type here in a moment. Das Tachten, what's Das Tachten? Shalamata Yesh, what's our perspective? Being, reality is here, Ulamayla ayin, and Ruchnius is nothing. As he goes on to explain, nothing we can grasp or describe or even experience. Now, that's the two days. There's no, nonetheless, says the Rebbe Rashab, there's no contradiction between them. Both are talking about godliness. It's a pasuk. God is a God of knowledges, so both knowledges are divine. Elo, now here's the distinction. There are two levels of the ayin. So they're both talking about the ayin, and what's the ayin here? From both perspectives, it's the divine revelation that creates. So let's see it now. So the Das Elyon, now he's going to explain. Das Elyon, the ba'ayin shalayesha miti. So Das Elyon talks about the revelation of the true being and the highest revelation of Hashem's Oir. Both are talking about Oir. So Hashem's revelation, Hashem's creative force at its very uppermost source. So what's Das Elyon? is Lamayla Yesh or Lamata. The Mata is the revelation of God is Ayin. So this is the highest level of revelation drawn from, that's expressed from the essence. So why is it called Ayin? Because it's truly not something else other than God. It's the Eibishter. It's the true Ayin in the truest absolute sense. Again, this is not the way it's explained elsewhere. V'das tachten hu ba'ayin shalayesh nimtza. And what's das tachten? Das tachten is the ayin of the created being, which is bechidas ha'orah, the ha'orah shenas is mokel yesh. It's not the same darga. I started off saying the language of the Maimon, it looks like that the word ayin is the same darga for different perspectives. Not quite, because he says it's a ha'orah, a reflection, which becomes the mokel for the yesh. It's something like the oil that is invested in creation. All he's saying is that both perspectives, ayin is referring to likus. Both perspectives are referring to likus. But just to finish this one, well, mashanikra ayin, why do we call a likus ayin? And what level is that? Ha'orah. Is Hashem she'ena musik, we can't grasp it. Hashem shu p'chinas loy dover, it's not something like the yesh is, created being. It's the emergence of something that in its own world experiences itself as something. The ayin that produces us is not that. It doesn't have this yeshes to it. And we call it ayin because it's beyond us. It's no thing that we can describe or relate to. That's what ayin means. So let's summarize what he's saying, the two days. Again, the chiddush is that in both days, ayin refers to likus. So das elyon is l'mayla yesh atzmos. L'mata, that which emerges from atzmos. The oir to reveal is ayin, is, God forbid, not something other than God. It's all Him. But it's true with the word of the language of the Maimon. Ayin be'etzem mahusa. So what's the mata? The mata is the giloy of atzmos. So the ayin, that's the ayin of atzmos. Right? It's a oir hakolol. The highest madrega is an oir where no sense of separation at all within self. Revelation within self and no distance from self, all self. That's das elyon. And creation proceeds from there. Now again, as we've pointed out many times, the most radical, quote unquote, change from the exclusive existence of God alone and nothing else. The most radical change is not Elam Haza, is Ur. It's Ur, this whole idea of revelation, again, because revelation implies otherness on some level. So what the Das Elyon is saying is there's no otherness, ayin. The revelation is all Him. That's Das Elyon. Das Tachten, Lamata Yesh. So reality is what we feel. Lamayla ayin. Now the Lamaya is also likus, but what level of a likus is even after many timtzumim, for that is still beyond us. It's no thing. A likus in its most ha'orah is totally beyond our tangible experience. So we call it no thing, ayin. Okay? Again, elsewhere in Chassidus, usually Das Elyon is Lamayla Yesh, is referring to Likus B'chalal, and Lamata is creation, is Ayin, is Batul B'Metzias. Not the Pshat here, not the beard here. Are we clear on the beard here? Lamayla, Das Elyon, Lamayla is Atzmos. Yes, that's the only true being. Lamata is the revelation of Atzmos, is Ayin. It's completely Batul B'Etzem Mahusa, it's all Him. His revelation is all Him. He's not given rise to anything other, God forbid. And Das Tachten is that reality is here, and Lamaila likus invested in us is something we cannot grasp at all, see, feel. It's not tangible, not in our physical world. If we call it ayin, nothing, no thing. It is no thing that it can be described. And we just described it as being beyond anything we know. Ayin. Okay. He's continuing the next paragraph. Mamshe b'mayim. Whenever Rashab continues in this Maimon from Tafresh Ayin Vov. Sorry.
Which was 50 years.
Sorry?
It's the 50th anniversary. On Breishis Chofov is the 50th anniversary of Ayin Vov.
Yeah, we said that in the beginning.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Mamshe b'mayim Hashem sheyesh beis deis l'maylo. So just like there are two perspectives l'maylo. Beginnes das elim v'das tachten. Okay, it's a bit. What does it mean? Beis deis l'maylo again? Because das tachten is not l'maylo. That's the whole thing starts the matter. But l'maylo means these are keldeis. They're two truths. There is the Metzias, the fact that is revealed to Atmos, and then there is the the second ayin, das tachten, that's invested in mislabish and creation, and that's by divine design. So it's called beis deis l'maylo. So these two perspectives, both of them, not just das tachten, but das elyon needs to be in a person's avodah v'hainu. And the question is, how could both be? We're part of the tachten. How could we relate, and how could they exist within us the inyan of das elyon? The answer is in square brackets, the fisha adam kol mikol yonim shebeseidish taushulus. Because a person is a microcosm and invested in him is all of the aspects of ishtalshalus, from the highest levels to the lowest. So therefore, the highest level of the oil, which is drawn from Atmos. So this has a parallel that is invested in the person, the matter, everything. Because the whole point of Seder Ishtalshalus, or point of creation, from the get-go, including the Gilui of the oil as it's bound up and inseparable from Atmos, the whole purpose of it all, the whole intent of it all, is because of Dir B'Tachtonim, because they wants a relationship with Asiyah Lamata. So therefore, every aspect of his divine expression is because of and therefore found in us. That means, by the way, that every single madrega, it's not always easy to see that is spoken, Lamaila has a parallel Lamata, the most sublime madregas. But in Nefesh Odom, in a person. Okay, so what are the two inyanim, the two deis, the two divine perspectives? In other words, they're two objective. When he says l'chayda, when he says that just like there are two deis l'mayla, he calls das tachten also a l'mayla, because they're objectively two perspectives, as the observer would observe creation. From the divine perspective and from the perspective of creation. They're not avodas, they're observances and divinely orchestrated observations or perspectives. But now he speaks in avodah. So how does this translate in avodah? Hey, in yichudi law, it's all about revealing God's unity. So there's the supernal yichuda unity that's das elyon. Yichud Tato, and there's a lower unity that's reflective of Das Tachten. Now, what is that? The root of that? So this, what unity are we talking about? Higher unity, lower unity. Unity of what? Unity of Havayan Elikim, which a Jew affects through Avodah. So there's two movements in this unity. God, the unity of Havaya Elikim, God's transcendent revelation and God's finite revelations, Havaya Elikim. So their unity is in two ways: Yichud Yilo, Yichud Tato. The higher unity, the lower unity, which means as follows. I'm just going to say the words, and the Hasbara, I assume the Maimon is going to explain. For Inyan Shiluv Adnai Bahavaya. So this is from Tanya. Shiluv means the fusion, the fusion. So there's the fusion of the lower name of Hashem Adnai, which is Elikim for our purposes, Bahavaya, in Havaya, and then there's Shiluv Havaya Ba'adnai, a unity again, but the way it's described here is Shem Havaya is fusing with Shem Adnai. The difference being, so when we're talking about the fusion of Shem Adnai, Adnai specifically is Malchus. We're talking about Yichud Zud, basically, which is the general template, Zoh and Malchus. So Adnai is Malchus, and Zoh is like Havaya, the transcendent beyond creation. In general terms, it's all relative. So when we talk about Shiluv of Adnai in Havaya, so what are we saying? That is Havaya al Adnai. That is a unity that the net result is that what dominates this unity? Havaya dominates Adnai Malchus. And that's Yichud Ilah, that's the higher unity, where the upper suffuses the lower and dominates it and illuminates it. When, however, Kasha who Havaya Be'adnai, but when the fusion is, the starting point is, as it were, Adnai, and we're bringing Havaya to Adnai, his Gabrus Adnai al Havaya. So here what dominates is the lower level over the higher level, and that is Yichud Tato, the lower unity. So there's two unities. So which one is reaching out to who? In simple language. The higher being drawn to the lower, and then the higher dominates, the higher being the initiator. Like who's the initiator of this yichud? And then there's the yichud, the initiation comes from below to above. That's yichud tato. So what defines and determines this whole relationship is the overtures of the receiver to the makabel to the mashpia. So what dominates that relationship is the makabel. So it's who initiates and where the movement comes from. Okay, in general terms, we're understanding this, yes? Keep on going. We'll reserve elaboration and see what the Maimon says. We're learning this together, friends. I just looked at it, I didn't learn. Looked at it. So likewise, in addition to what we're describing now, referring to now at least, Yichud Yilo, Yichud Tato, which is all a reflection of Das Elyon and Das Tachten. So too, these 2 days, Das Elyon and Das Tachten, exist in Torah. There's Torah that expresses the Elyon and Torah that expresses the Tachten. And what's that? For Inyan Lechem and the Audit. So there you have bread as a metaphor for Torah. So this earthly bread, that's Galia the Torah, that's the revealed Torah, that's Das Tachten. For Lechem and Hashemayim, and heavenly bread, that's Pnimius HaTorah. Kipshuta, there's where Torah speaks of earthly things, and where Torah speaks of heavenly things, heavenly reality. That's Pnimius HaTorah. And in the bigger picture, in the Lechem and the Oretz, who Masha Nitmiyad Lachitz Yes Mitzrayim. So earthly bread was given right away after Yetzias Mitzrayim in terms of the instructions that they received. They got mitzvahs already before Matan Torah. Lechem in the Shamayim and heavenly bread was revealed a little later. Klolasing in the Matan Torah, that was by Matan Torah. Hashem revealed himself. Gam Galia de Torah shegam zeh p'chinas das elyon. So the big picture, Torah altogether is das elyon. We say Klolas Yosef that both lechem in the Oretz and lechem min hashamayim in the bigger picture are two aspects within das elyon. Let's see, Hainish lechem in the Oretz say idea. No. You just said no. Let's get this again. Baklolis Yosef, and in general, just after making the distinction between Nigla and Pnimius, then he said Baklolos, Lechem in the Oretz was right after Yetzias Mitzrayim. Lechem in the Shamayim is Matan Torah. By Matan Torah also Matan Torah also revealed not just Elikus, but also instructions, Galia de Torah. Shegam Zeh says, P'chinas das elyon. The chayret means, by Matan Torah, at least then, was felt, even in the Nigla, the das elyon, that God's revealing this. Let's see the end of the oyes. Again, the Hainish lechem in the Oretz, see how Yediyah, have earthly bread is the knowledge of das tachten, as you said moments ago. And what's that? So that's our engagement in the world, earthly bread, as we're elevating the sparks from below to above. And that is that's where Adnai dominates. And we're elevating Shem Adnai, we're elevating the sparks to the transcendent. The lechem and Hashemayim ba'yichud avai v'likim b'pchina shiluv Adnai ba'avaya. Lechem and Hashemayim is the yichud avai v'likim in a way where again Havaya dominates. B'pchinas das elyon. Okay, we get the general idea. We get. I'm going to relearn it, frankly, and perhaps share some more, clarity more tomorrow. So lechem and Hashemayim is the yichud of Havaya likim b'pchinas shiluv Adnai ba'avaya. Where Havaya dominates. And lechem and ha'oretz is avedis habirurim, is elevating from below to above, and what dominates there, and what determines the whole relationship, it creates a relationship, is the mata. Okay, so let's summarize this ois. Let's get, it's a lot of words, they all just match up if we have two lines, two columns. So the 2 days l'mayla translate in the two ifanim of yichud that the Jew needs to affect. Yichud ilah and yichud tata. What yichud are we talking about? Havaya and elikim. What are the two different yichudim? What dominates? Is Havaya nimshach and Shem elikim or Shem adnai? That's yichud ilah. That's lechem and hashamayim. That's pnimius haTorah. First, if you learn pnimius haTorah, it's a revelation of divinity to us, of godliness to us. And then there's yichud. That's the yichud of Adnai in Havaya. So what dominates is Shem Havaya. It's Yichud Ilah. When the Yichud is Havaya Ba'adnai, so that's Malamata Lamaila. So what dominates is Shem Adnai, that's Lechem Min Ha'oretz. That's Avedis Berurim, as he says at the end, Malamata Lamaila. Just have to revisit that those few lines there. B'klalis Yosef. That Lechem in the Orach is given right away. Lechem Shemayim was Matan Torah, but Matan Torah also included Nigla, Shegam Zeh B'chinas Das Elyon. It seems, okay, that at least the experience of Matan Torah, even Nigla, was Das Elyon. At any rate, what we need to know is, as we concluded, that Lechem in the Oretz is Avedis Berurim, and Lechem in Hashemayim is Pnimis HaTorah, as being Mamshech Alikus, godliness down here in this world. So all of this is an introduction to understand why Torah begins with creation and Ummas Ha'olam and so on. Okay, Beis Hashem to be continued tomorrow in Montreal with God's help, at MTC and on Zoom.